I've lived and farmed at Warooka all of my life, and I've been farming now for 52 years. It's a long time. We've been, up the forefront, and one of the first farmers on your peninsula to go into no-till farming. And so this last harvest was the 30 years we've been no-till farming and retaining our stubbles basically for the last 25 years. But we've got the one overriding problem has always been snails, which have been on our farm and has been documented they were in the Warooka district for 100 years. That's the European snails that came in. So we've had, basically we get okay farming until the late 80s when we first started having problems, and we used to have to bait our snails. So you get that rolling, get it going. So we got some vision, and instead of me just speaking all day, I've got some video to show of how we go about farming, and we'll sort of run on from there. And I think I can probably show you some of the problems that we face. We try to farm. So this is vision now from the way we see. We've got a seraphim disc feeder, which we've used. This is the third season we've used that. As I said before, auto steer, 2 centimetre auto steer. We sow in the interrow. We grow all crops: canola, lentils, peas, beans, chickpeas, and wheat and barley. And so our biggest problem is this little mongrel here. This is Theba pisana. I don't know whether you've got snails. You've heard about snails, but they are an emerging problem Australia-wide in cropping areas. They have been, as I said, there have been big problems on our farm and lower southern Yorke Peninsula for many years. And so this is some of the vision that was taken the last few years. The key messages I can give you are: if you've got snails or you know people that have, is to monitor them now, to find out where they are and try and eliminate them, because they will spread, and they will, particularly in our farming systems these days, they will be very hard, if impossible to eradicate, because there's nothing that can break their life cycle that we've found to eliminate them yet. And we've been involved with all research ever since the late 90s. A lot of that's been funded by GRDC up until 2005, and then the funding ceased, and it's as a result of 2 wet summers. A lot more people have found the problem. Other areas like in Victoria, West Australia, all over southern New South Wales, in cropping areas, and so that now it's high on their agenda. This is our windrower. This was like last season, and we stopped just to check the machine, and that was on the belt of the windrower. So this is how we go about cleaning our canola to run after we've harvested. Ground snails aren't a problem to us in canola. We have our problems with canola where we have the conical snails the same size as canola seed, so you can't scalp them out, can't screen them out. But touch wood, the last 3 seasons, this is the scalpings from our canola this season. We're able to scalp our canola and scalp out all the conicals at 45 tonnes an hour with our machine, with a 5-screen cleaner with 2 millilitre slotted screens. Never done that before until 2 years ago. So this just shows the scalpings coming out, and then we're able to deliver all our canola. 800 tonne this year, straight into the silo. What a relief! Sensational. As I said, we grow lentils, and because of the wet summers in 2010, 2011, we used to plant a lot of lentils, and 2011 we planted one farm with 300 hectares of lentils, and we only got to harvest 170 hectares. 130 hectares was no lentil crop left. We'd baited 3 times with metaldehyde baits, and there was still no crop. The 170 hectares we harvested, we would have probably been able to deliver 400 kilograms per hectare. But other farms we farmed, where these bags are here, they yielded 4.5 tonnes a hectare of lentils. But we had to clean them all, and this is our cleaning process with a locally built cleaner, 5-screen cleaner. Where we had the big problem with snails on that 300 hectare area, this is where we're cleaning that first before we put it in the bag, because they were just wet with snails, probably up to 150 in 200 grams of grams of snails. And so it just shows you the problem we've got. And we've got the 4 species of snails. This is the screenings So we're trying to clean it as much as we could before we put it in the bag, because they didn't have segregation for the flash lentils that year. So and this is the scalpings coming out. This is just so we could get it down, and then we still had 15 snails in 200 grams. So I went in the bag, and then later in the season, I'm not sure I got vision of that, but we were able to deal with them, clean and delivered. I think we delivered 1,400 tonne of snail. Not snail. I'll tell you something later on you won't believe, but of the lentils. So it's our biggest problem. It's the thing we spend all our time at, is trying to deal with them so we can continue to farm. And as I said before, they're spreading to a lot of other areas, and a lot of people have, asked us how we deal with them. This is a machine which was built into about 2001 called a snail crusher. You may have heard of it, may not, but we run our grain through. That's just after being through a cleaner, and that's showing some of the brown grass and snails stuff. But the snail crusher, we're able to adjust that and run the grain through, and that's all wheat, barley, all crops apart from canola, and crush the snails that are the same size as the grain that we cannot scalp out or screen out conventionally with a conventional cleaner. So this is the year I was telling you about with the failed lentil. That should be a lentil crop, and that's some of the areas. After baiting 3 times through the season, and we just had no control at all, because they'd laid their eggs in the summertime before our critical thing is to bait them before they lay eggs. We didn't realise, and we put out the bait. We had a few mice that year. Mice ate the bait, Nematode bait, and also we've got a bronze field beetle in that soil type. And we didn't realise at the time that the bronze field beetle were eating the bait as well, of course not killing any of them. And so the snails we had no control over them, and so they just boomed. I've been involved in, as I said, research and providing help for researchers. This is a little machine I've developed, my super duper snail scooper. You might have heard of research on the nematode, a nematode to be released that kills snails. They needed snails, and so I've been sending for about 3 years now snails to the Charles Sturt University in Wagga for their research. And so this is how I collect them. When they're high enough off the ground to collect. Most of the year they're not, but in a crop like that, a wheat crop, we're able to rush through, and then sometimes in stubbles. That's how we do that, which is, a little machine. It's nothing, but some people think we pick them up one at a time, but we send off, we probably don't now, probably 10 times, 10 2 vegetable boxes at a time. $280 freight overnight to Charles Sturt University, so they can do the research. But that was for the Nematode project, and then also to the Queensland University. There's another Dr. Scott Cummins, who is working on another project on their biology, and he is confident that he can find some trigger points and put in blockers to affect the way that snails operate. In other words, the way snails, you've seen them on fence posts, maybe. If you haven't, you might see them in a minute. What triggers them to come off the ground, and Scott is confident that he's found the trigger points, and he can introduce in some form, some way to remove that ability, so that if you've got snails and you can introduce the blocker, that might be a way we can eradicate some of our snails. So he's been after snails, and so we send them off up to him too. Funny about that, having to come all the way to Warooka to get snails. This is when the nematodes were first released at Middleton, actually, in the York and Glenelg Soils Group site, and they bred them up and they brought them down. The nematodes are natural nematodes from Australian soils, of which there are 300, and they found 2 that actually attack and lay eggs in and kill snails, lay eggs in a snail, and they can actually 100,000 juveniles can hatch out of one snail. So they're still working on that project. The ones I released here weren't that successful because they needed more of a moist soil content, and so they've selected another 5 last year, but they're having trouble breeding them up. They sent some to Germany, picked up from Australia, sent to Germany, had trouble getting them back into the country. So that's sort of a little bit annoying, the fact that the snails came from Europe, but something that we had from Australia to go over to multiply the numbers because it couldn't be done in Australia. Oh, no, they can't come back. So this is, we're moving on. It chops and changes a bit. I've added some to my original video because there were some things that we do. So we do go out in conditions like now, this time of the year, starting from now, crushing as many as we can. But our soil type has got so much calcium carbonate that the shells are so hard that a lot of that steel roller pushes a lot into the ground without damaging them. But we do crush, we still do it, crush it. We do get some success with the big round ones, but not the conicals. During harvest, we do a lot of things at harvest time, but wheat, this is a wheat crop. You can see the snails, the round snails go up, and this is not vision, this is off. I hadn't got around to getting it onto video, but this shows the idea with a pusherbar. You've probably heard of them, never seen them. It's something you just manufacture, and way back 50, 60 years ago, some people in the Warooka district were using branches from mallee bushes attached in front of their harvesters to do the same damn thing. But you can see the snail, it just lodges them, depending on how long, how hot and dry the year has been. If it's been like that for 3 or 4 weeks, well then they're harder to knock off. But you know, it's very successful, you can see them falling off. So the secret is to be able to get as many pushed off before they get to the harvester. And we'll go into that a little bit later, like like what you do with them. A lot of the information is available in the Bash and Burn and Beta manual from GRDC, which was published about 2001. You may have seen it. That's still relevant. It's very little has changed, very little new information. Some methods are. So that's something. But this is a video that I made back in 2001, I think it was, to show the soil type. And so I'll just...
And retain all that stuff.
There's a voice over, so I'll just cut up for a while.
This is our seeding machine, an all-farm air seeder, 9.9 metres wide. We're using maxi points and Charmin press wheels. We spray our weeds ahead and direct seed into the stubbles we have left behind. This gives an idea as to the stubble that we can handle. Very satisfied with the crop establishment, legumes or even cereals with high trash residues, and of course this has created problems with snail numbers, because what's good for the soil is very, very good for snail ecology. But this now shows emerging crops in the presence of the stubble residue, and at this stage is getting a barley crop, which we would have baited early at emergence with 5 kilograms of meta to try and eliminate the snail before they damage the crop. We're in a monitoring program, and this is what we find in the area we've been monitoring. A dogweed bush, which is one of our summer weeds, is killed by the sprayer head. And we find that snails just love the residue, and they much prefer to, you know, like eat on that rather than seek out baits. So very poor results from snail baiting in the presence of either live or dead summer weeds. As I said, this is a barley in a lentil stubble, and now this is the same paddock where we had the snail numbers down. Prior to harvest, we had a snail count here of up to, on average, 340 per square metre. Individual quadrants, we were able to count up to 6,000 per square metre. You can see the the snails coming off the ground as the temperature warms up. This is a cut-leaf mignonette, the other summer weed, which is a problem in our area, and the snails live under that sources, live under the bush and source moisture and shelter. So you can see the tassel effect of the flag. This is as it heads the barley. This now shows you the size of the snails, the problem snail we have to deal with in relation to dicoin. We can screen out the large snails, basically all the white snails, and the round snails, and the very small snails, but the ones the same size as the grain being harvested are the major problem. As I said, I'm in a monitoring program with Megan Lathan, and here's a quadrant. We snip the crop and count 1/10 of a square metre at random to get an idea as to the effectiveness of any snail control or operation. This is a pre-harvest count, and in this 1/10 of a square metre there are 600 snails. You can see them clustering at the base of the barley plants, and this is the major problem. This is the same barley stubble after harvest, and it shows the congregation of snails where they've clustered. They've virtually lived most of the season in the close proximity to a summer weed, and at this stage they haven't moved away from that area. Great sight. Anyway, this one shows the cut-leaf mignonette bush, where they are seeking moisture and food source, and they will be primed up ready for laying eggs very early in the season. This is a pasture, it was a pasture, and it's actually barley stubble from the previous season we've used as a pasture. And just to give you an idea, where we had no snail control, the snail numbers built up to who knows how many per square metre. And this is just one little section anywhere in a 53 hectare paddock. Well, with numbers that high, we really need to work hard if we're going to continue farming. You might have seen snails on fence posts in the Warooka district. We grow them on trees. The she oak tree out in the middle of the paddock, cropping paddock, and how on earth would you deal with them save bulldozing the tree? We do try burning stubbles when we've got high numbers, and what you're looking at here are the dead snails after burning a barley stubble, and they are lying in the furrows created by the press wheels as we seeded the previous year. And of course, with burning and their fragile soils comes erosion. That's the reason why, as I said, no-till farming, and we have to find answers to the devastating effect of burning. You see, it's very effective. We've killed a lot of the snails, but some of the snails do survive under stones, stumps and summer weeds, which create problems. So the burning on its own is not a total answer, but we have to resort to that when we've got large snail numbers. So an alternative method now is cabling, and this shows 25mm cable sourced from Morgan, Department of Transport, old punt cables, and here we see suspended between a tractor and four-wheel drive, and shows the snails on the stubble just knocking off with a cable. And the advantage of the cable, we find, being 320 metres in length, we were able to cable 500 hectares in 3.5 hours. So we can repeat the operation when conditions are suitable. And remove the snails. This shows in the pasture paddock, the snails are up on the dead stubble. And it just gives an idea as to what effect it has. We found, because of the cool climate at Warooka, we don't get many days where it's suitable for rolling or whatever. But you can see here the thermometer shows 38, 39 degrees at the ground temperature, and the snails here have been knocked off by the cable, but they are quite content to lie there. That heat is not extreme, is not causing any concern at all. The next day, the day temperature was 39 degrees, which meant the ground temperature was up to 54 degrees. And this is what we really need to see. The snails there are squirming and writhing and trying to get up off the ground. Observing them the next day, 95% of them were dead. But we find that repeating the operation often has more success than just once over. This is the Cutley's mignonette in flower in a lentil stubble, and that's the dogweed, the little yellow flower. Is the dogweed. We call them summer weeds. But they are a food source and shelter, moisture for the snails. And even though cabling is very effective in knocking snails off stubbles, the cable brushes over the summer weeds, and the snails you're looking at here aren't damaged at all. Moving on, if you've still got snails in our crop and we harvested, this shows the SMIC, snail crusher in operation. The miracle machine, it's just meant so much difference to us where we haven't been able to remove the snail the same size as the grain. We've been able to crush the grain at 22 tonnes an hour. This machine is operating at the moment, and the chase has been picking up off the harvester into the delivery bin, just run it straight through, and you have the option of cleaning the offal, the grain, after it's crushed, and remove any particles of snail, or if only in small numbers, they crush to minute particles. This shows the grain we're talking about, and you can see the comparative size of the snails, conical snails, in relation to barley. You understand why you can't screen them out. And moving on to the next clip, we'll show crushed meatballs. Here we are, nice crushed snail guts with just particles of shell still attached. After going up an auger, it sort of screws it and it all dissipates and finishes up as dust. The barley there was scared to malting with 60 snails in half a litre, and after going through the crusher, and in this case through a screen as well, delivered as geared to malting one with no snails. This just shows some of the residue particles that we were able to screen out at the rate of 22 tonnes an hour, which is worthless residue, which makes it very good for malting. This is a tent where the parasitic fly for the conical snail was released back in May the year 2000. Shows the fly, a French fly, actually laying eggs into the snail's body as it's activating on the side of the tent. And here we are, the 25th of the 10th. That fly was the first fly to emerge in anywhere in the world on a program such as that. This is our other miracle machine, an incline belt cleaner developed by Michael Richards for cleaning canola that has been cleaned previously but still has conical snails which are the same size as the canola. It's proved to be extremely effective. At the present time it is a very slow capacity, but we've been able to clean all of canola which we had stored for up to 2 years with up to 40 snails in half a litre after being cleaned conventionally to remove all snails and deliver the canola to Osbogd Ardrossan and meet all specifications.
Okay, well that shows you some of the process we go through in meeting receival standards to deliver our grain. So we are still bashing away at it, and as I said, a lot of work was funded by GRDC up until 2005. Now it's high on the agenda and there were more trials being done. Just recently there was sort of some trials. Well, first of all I'll speak to something coming up, just some photos, and I'll show you. As a result of, I was on landline with the subject after many years. It was talked about early last year, sorry, and we actually have been, it's been on a landline, and it's been as the best of landline. You may have seen it, you may not, but we had some emails from a guy from Portugal whose father has started collecting snails 30 years ago. He's had this business and he's developed that, and he's collecting the snails. And one of the species we tried many years ago, like it would have been 15 years ago, the request is to say, well, are they any good for human consumption? No, too small. This company in Portugal, they employ a lot of people, and he contacted us because he saw us on a news service of the landline program, and he recognised the snails as the Theba pisana. So this is bags of Theba pisana, the snail that we've been dealing with, trying to work our guts out to get out of it so we could deliver our grain. And this is the festivals that they have, and he wants us to deliver snails to Portugal. I've sent some photos with calipers, you know, and he thinks he's excited about the size of them, and he wants to come over, but he wants me to send 10 kilograms, so we're trying to do that. We've got to get a vet certificate, we've got to get approval from the export authorities from Australia to even send 10 kilograms over there. We've also been contacted by a girl from north of Sydney in the Hunter Valley who is breeding snails for the restaurant trade. They're the large ones, and she will pay us $50 a kilogram if we will produce snails for her, growth snails. The lentils you saw us clean, we got 40 cents a kilogram. And we're cleaning these Theba pisana snails out of them that are possibly worth $30 a kilogram, $50 a kilogram. How ridiculous is that? So it really makes life interesting. But there's a lot of going with, but I know time goes by. Currently, GRDC, I said before, are funding research, and there's been a lot of things tried. You may have heard of them, you may not. Perlka fertiliser was developed in 1895 in Germany, and they claim it kills snails, slugs and their eggs. And the guy saw it on landline, and he's from the importer. It is used in market gardens. It's slow release fertiliser, and in broad acres on our farm it hasn't worked as successful as we'd liked, but there was some success. Caffeine in coffee is a toxic substance, and that has had some success, but Sanford guys are working on that. We've tried some on our farm. Urea does kill snails at certain times, but the trials we've done, and it's been documented by Sardi in Adelaide, it must be only a certain time of the year when their shell is growing, so it's only very small, like covering membrane over the body. And actually we had some neighbours, farmers, who had some success, and we had a little bit of success, but when they did the trials, no success, but the shell had hardened, so it didn't get into the body. That's about it. I mean, there's been some trials too, which they're reassessing all the baits available and having some very amazing results. 2011, we used $48,000 worth of snail bait, 30 tonne on our farm, and as you saw, we baited 3 times in a lot of areas, and that was virtually, it only kills large snails. doesn't do anything to the juvenile snails. We find that we found just recently that a bait that is available. It was the first bait we ever used back in the 80s, Measurol from Bayer. That's killing quite a few things, and particularly the juvenile snail. So there is more and more work going on. You might have heard of work from the Melbourne University, a microwave machine for seed destruction. We're very excited about working with that as a possibility, that if that machine's successful in killing weed seeds, then it could very well kill eggs in the ground as well as snails as well. So we've got to be optimistic, but at this stage there's no simple solution. But we've got to try and aim every opportunity, every ounce of our energy and money from GRDC at trying to break the life cycle, and that's something we've never been able to achieve.
Is there any work being done on roadsides around your farm?
On roadsides? No. Well, I know some people say, oh well, you should spend a lot more time on your roadside fences, to stop them invading your farm. But we've got them all over our farm, and we've never had 1 square metre where we've been able to eliminate them totally. No whole paddock, and so we do bait fence lines. I mean, in canola we work our guts out and do our best we possibly can so that we can grow canola. We're one of the only growers of canola on Southern Yorke Peninsula. We've got that incline belt as a backup. I invested money in that too. But we haven't had to use it for 8 years. So we work at it, and it's a concern to me that there should be more people involved in trying to find answers. District councils, the roadsides, we're not allowed to spread bait on the roadsides. We're supposed to be 50 metres from the fence. We're not allowed to put any pellets out on the roadside. And the roadsides are absolutely massed with snails. So even if we did, a canola stubbles, for instance, are relatively clean, but the snails are invading. And I think that's the thing that you guys are looking at, spread the message around that you might have on your farm, but snails, they hitchhike. My car's out there, I haven't looked underneath, but I can guarantee there'll be snails there somewhere. And they travel in, like field bins, farm machinery, hay, all that sort of thing. They do start spreading, and it's very disturbing, the areas now where snails are being detected in all cropping areas, and not just in South Australia, in Victoria, New South Wales, and in a large area in West Australia. Yeah.
You talked about baiting.
Yes.
Throughout
yes.
the season.
Yes.
What were the timings of the baiting?
Well, that year we missed the opportunity. We'd learnt quite a while ago, and I guess we got a little bit casual. Didn't realise that because of the wet soil, that the snails and our subbleweeds, they live under them. It's like a lovely fern house, and so they breed earlier than they would in a normal, like say, inland from Australian coastal areas. And so we would have baited them, thought our first bait would have been before they laid eggs, but it was after that, obviously. And then so the snails were still moving. We baited within, say, 3 weeks of that. And that year it may have been March, the first bait, and then it might have been April, May, and then maybe June. And the areas were just write-offs because the landed plants were just destroyed, disappeared. Yeah. But the normal are gone.
Yeah, Graham, have you played around with copper as a deterrent, not so much a control, but like a deterrent?
Yes, well, I haven't personally, but I know many years ago, Trevor Dillon, an agronomist, on Yorke Peninsula, who would have been the most, experienced person as far as that's concerned. Yeah, he'd done a lot of work with copper sulphate, and it can be very useful as a border bait only. Generally, like to have enough copper sulphate, say on a crop, you'd burn the crop off before you'd kill the snails. It was used, I remember back in, he was telling us, the only advice he'd give, they had windrow their canola, and they had the snails all over the canola windrows, and he said, well, spray it with copper sulphate. I don't think that did work. But I know the rice industry, they're in big trouble. They've got aquatic snails, and they're using copper sulphate to kill snails, very successful. But the levels of copper are now built up to toxic levels, and they're in big trouble trying to get something else to control aquatic snails. So copper sulphate, yeah, and there are a lot of other things that are that are, you know, like available, but, you know, they just don't work as a, you know, complete answer.